Salam and peace. Welcome to today's IG Live, Period Shame and Pelvic Health. We are going to be in conversation with Sister Afsha Malik of Bloom Body Soul. My name is Chantal Blake. I'm the author of Peaceful Periods and founder of Honored Womb. And I'm really excited for this conversation because many times we don't really understand the connection between our emotional selves and how it impacts our physiologic health and our function in our actual bodies. Shame in particular has a very unique imprint and a unique way of shaping our bodies, and we're going to talk about that with Sister Afsha today, who is a holistic pelvic health expert. So as soon as she joins, we'll get into this conversation. Many of you have probably noticed Sister Afsha. We collaborated for a previous program, which was Peaceful Perimenopause. So she's been a collaborator of mine, and she has been really a joy to work with and to know about. So as soon as she joins, inshallah, we'll get started. I'll just kind of get the conversation started just because for me, I often, in the methodology that I use for facilitating courses and workshops and circles, it's really important to start with our stories. Alaikum assalam. And so starting with our stories is a really powerful entry point into our conversations, into unpacking some of our early stories, narratives, and beliefs about a given topic. And so when we have these stories, we sometimes forget that there is an imprint that lingers with that story. There are often very strong emotions. And so some of these strong emotions that may come up could be emotions like fear. Sometimes we feel embarrassment or shame, and they have a real impact on how our body moves forward and associates that topic with those emotions and how it functions in the body. Bismillah. Okay, assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
How are you today?
Alhamdulillah. Let me put myself in the right place here.
Yeah. Alhamdulillah, you're good. I can see you well. I just started a little bit by introducing you as a holistic pelvic health expert and how we're getting into this conversation about how some of these strong emotions in our lives, they don't just pass, they don't just evaporate. They lodge themselves in our bodies in very powerful ways that can even affect how our bodies function. And so oftentimes in my work, we often start with story. What is the story about a particular topic, whether it's periods or perimenopause? And when I ask women to recall their first period and what emotions come to mind, there's often fear because they were not prepared. Often a sense of panic, confusion. Why am I bleeding? Am I dying? What's wrong? Because our early associations with blood and bleeding tends to be danger, injury, and they weren't prepared for menstrual bleeding. And then there's also shame and there's grief. There's a lot of grief about I'm not a little girl anymore. All of the things they're told they can no longer do, right? Who they can play with, how they can play, what they can wear, what they can't wear. So how do some of these really strong emotions, how do they live in our bodies after we have these very sensitive experiences?
Yeah, absolutely. And that just is bringing up memories of my own time as well. When suddenly everything changes so much. Life completely changes. It's no longer what you once knew and felt safe in. So these big emotions are part of being human, and they do live in our bodies, but where they get stuck or lodged, as you said, is when they're not allowed to complete and integrate, and when there's a lid put on them, and we don't feel safe in expressing we don't feel safe in talking through or having the conversation and still feeling that we will be loved. So when we don't feel that way, we then choose very wisely to stay quiet in order to survive within the tribe. And so when that happens, that's when these emotions become toxic, because emotions are energy. Okay, and energy, and you can also say emotions are like neurochemicals. That there's a chemical component to them. They move through the body as messengers, hormones, chemicals, and they make physiological changes to make us have these feelings and sensations. So when these are, we're not allowed to express them, then they become sedimented in the body through the fascial system or the nervous system. And then they become a pattern. Of course, over many years, that pattern then becomes an identity, a personality or an identity. Whereas, it's actually just a suppressed or repressed emotion. So it
That's
lives
such.
in the body everywhere. It can turn up. For example, people will say, does it live in, your pelvis? Stuck emotions live in the pelvis. I don't really agree with that in the sense that emotions don't just randomly sit in your pelvis. It's not like that. It's just that your pelvis is the place where a lot of bracing occurs and a lot of stagnation occurs. So a tight pelvis will be, one of the symptoms of someone who's, very, perhaps a type A personality, always doing, always pushing, people pleasing. And those tendencies are trauma responses usually. And they start in childhood with these kind of experiences. So the pelvis is the first place where we will brace for impact. And so is our breath, which is linked to our pelvic floor intimately. So these two places are very common, but these stuck emotions can turn up in things like a clenched jaw, rounded shoulders, a collapsed chest, a shallow breath, obviously tight pelvic floors, mental fog, confusion. So it can be anywhere in the body in actual fact.
Thank you for naming that, because, sometimes as parents, there's this idea that, like, I want my child. I was with another mom and she was feeling some regret, like, oh, this travel was really hard for my child and I regret bringing him. And I was like, it's such a natural thing. We want to make life as smooth as possible. We don't want our children to have any hardship, but it's the reality of being human that there are going to be moments that are frightening, that are difficult, that are challenging, that are shocking. But it's what we do and how those emotions are integrated that make the difference between it being resulting in trauma and kind of repatterning the ways that we move and function in some way, versus something that we move through and builds resilience that
Yeah.
allows us to move forward. And so, it's not, the goal is not to not have any hard experiences. Like, these are the things that grow us, that raise us, that stretch us, that help us to show our power and capacity. But at the same time, realizing that how they're held and how we hold each other as we go through these big transitions or these difficult experiences is really, really, really powerful. So can you
Yeah,
help us understand? Go ahead.
sorry, I just wanted to say in response to that about how important shame is. Shame is a primary emotion. It's crucial in our self-development because it's a relational emotion. It teaches us that, we've crossed a social boundary, or that something in the situation is needs to be repaired, or that we may have hurt or impacted someone in a way that does not align with our values. And so it's a forward moving emotion if it's allowed to resolve, if it's allowed to complete. And I think it's a shame if we it's a shame if we don't acknowledge that this is part of our self development. We have a
Mm,
self-reproaching soul, a complaining soul, I think it's called, where that stage of the soul we have to go through that discomfort in order to grow. Now, where it becomes toxic is when we get stuck in that part of the growth process. So it is really important and
mm,
we mustn't mollycoddle and you know wrap our children in such a cloud. And I feel that that's happened, and a lot of the problems that we see in even our generation are because of this, that we mustn't
mm,
make any mistakes, we mustn't feel any pain, we mustn't. And it's a natural and justifiable survival technique, but is it creating adults? I'm not sure. We see a lot
mm.
of problems where people are now in their 50s trying to move through that.
Yeah. And I guess it's also this idea that you don't seek out pain and hardship, but at the same time, you can't,
Yeah.
you can't over exert yourself in trying to prevent it at any and all costs. But shame is a very loaded word. So if you can help us kind of navigate what is a healthy sense of shame and what's not healthy, because oftentimes especially like when you hear the gentle parenting or the positive parenting, like no shame, blame, or pain. And so I guess I think about the context of children a lot. And then in my context, I think about periods. And a lot of women have this shame around their periods, right? That it's something disgusting, something to be hidden, something to be concealed. So just kind of navigating what is a healthy sense of. I like how you framed it, that, shame helps us to know when we've crossed the line, when we've crossed boundaries. But
So, yeah.
when is it harmful?
So I suppose a healthy shame it's a feeling that's quite specific to a situation.
Mm,
It's not the identity. So it's the feeling of this is wrong, or this is something I don't like, not I am wrong.
mm,
And we can go from that state of this situation is wrong to there's something wrong with me very
mm,
quickly, depending on how our caregivers, because most of this stems from childhood. So let's take it to childhood.
yes.
But how our caregivers have responded, emotional misattunement, emotional neglect, emotional absence, punishment for expressing. Someone might express, I don't like this. Why do I have it? And mum says, oh, well, Allah gave it to you. I don't like Allah. And then there could be punishment for that. Instead
Mm,
of gently listening to this child's ranting and raving, and then when you're in an emotionally grounded state, when your nervous system is regulated, when you've taken a breath, then instead of reacting, you think about your response and how it's going to impact the child long term. Now, most of us don't do that in that state. We were not
mm,
told about this, and especially up till now, we were living honestly in a different consciousness. A lot of the conversations that we have now were just not in the radar at all. So what we're dealing with are parents who are just not thinking about long-term impact on
mm,
children. So all of these kind of situations, also the shame of, like, if you've been shamed for your needs, like, mom, I need to cry about this. I feel angry about it. I need to cry. I need some love over this. I need love when I'm in pain, instead of no chalo chalo chalo. That's Urdu. Come on, you've
mm,
got to get on with it. you know, or no, you're going to have to go to school. No, you have to go and do PE. So all of these things are not allowing the person to express what they're actually feeling. And so they will then learn to suppress and to keep quiet. And that quietness and suppression from the jaw to the breath will cement in the body and become the pattern. You know, the person who bites their lip, the person who will placate everybody, but even if it goes against their values, the person who will, you know, show up to everything to feel safe and validated in a community, and therefore burn themselves out. All of these things stem from that. But shame is actually a very, even toxic shame, because I don't believe anything in the body is dysfunctional. Toxic shame is a very wise strategy, because in the situation, we have to survive in a tribe. It's relational. You know, we've got a community and we've got a family, and we have to survive in it. So even toxic shame is there as a behavioral strategy to help us survive. But a time will come when we realize that it needs to be gone. And the shame is like a lid on a deeper wound, because it's never really shame that's the wound. The wound is anger that nobody listens to, grief that nobody witnesses, you know, rage about the injustice and unfairness of it all, of being a woman, and just, you know, fear that has never had that sort of co-regulation. So that's actually the wound that we then need to heal as we go through our healing journey, and we come into the pelvis and start to connect with the womb and the pelvic floors.
So what are some indicators of pelvic health dysfunction, right? Like, you know, it might take time and maybe skill to kind of navigate what exactly is shaping these patterns in the body, and kind of revisiting some childhood experiences and observation, right? Noticing these different social habits or behavioral habits. But what are some, to bring it to the pelvic floor specifically, what are some signs, some clues, some kind of knocks, like, hey, there's some dysfunction here? How would someone recognize that? And
yeah, I mean, and it actually can start very early, and we see it already, because pelvic floor dysfunction is mainly all about tension, and our response to things that we don't like and that are not good for us is tension and bracing. So if you just think about even that tiny clenching of the jaw, and then how it will then create tension down the neck, and then how maybe lifting your shoulders all day long, just even if it's a millimeter, then starts to cause knots down your shoulder. You can tell I've got experience. I'm going, yes, I'm feeling all the bits, you know. And then the bracing of the belly, you know, all of that, and then how it affects your breath and then your chest. So it's going to manifest in many different ways, but pelvically, in that area, we already see it in young girls with period pain. So a lot of period pain is the tension in the pelvic floor due to perhaps, you know, this shame, or just not feeling comfortable about it, or having to hide it all the time. That causes bracing, because our pelvic floor is literally interconnected with our nervous system, the autonomic nervous system, that is linked to our fight, flight, rest, digest. So when we are perceiving threat, then the pelvic floor is one of the first places to brace. And just think about it. It's a very intimate part. Like, you might, you poo, pee, and it's all about intercourse. So it's going to brace and tighten to protect the individual. And that then affects the breath. So you will find bladder for older women usually, but we see it in young girls as well. You will find bladder and bowel symptoms, and sexual dysfunction and general pain disorders. And so that could look like constipation. And how many women are constipated? Literally everybody.
Yes.
Everybody. And they're eating all the fiber and they're drinking, with those big drink mug things that people carry around now.
Yes.
But they're still constipated. And if that's the case, we're looking at pelvic floor tension. Constipation, a feeling of not emptying well, throughout the day. You've gone to the loo, but you've not emptied. You don't feel relieved fully. Incontinence, and that means any leakage. So stress incontinence with a laugh or a sneeze or a jump, or even fecal incontinence. So on the other side, things like urgency, things like pelvic pain. So that dull, achy pain that's not, very vague. Back pain, lower back pain. Things like vaginismus, which is that tightening when you are in intimacy. Pain while having sex. Pain in the tailbone and the sacrum. So tailbone pain, sacral pain. Jaw pain. TMJ. Lots of girls suffer from that. Foot issues. So pelvic floor issues, if you think about it, the pelvis is in the center of the body. Everything above is attached and everything below is attached. So what happens here is very crucial. Breath dysfunction, anxiety because you're not actually breathing very well. So then you come into a vicious cycle. So there's lots of different manifestations of pelvic floor dysfunction.
Amazing.
Prolapse. Yeah, prolapse.
Yeah, exactly. So what are some of the holistic ways that you support women who are showing signs of pelvic dysfunction? Of course, people are told, okay, I was told to do Kegels and do these exercises, but you approach the pelvic health very holistically. So what are some of those modalities that you teach or facilitate for women who are working with you?
Yeah, so obviously a lot of women that engage with me are brown women of color, Muslim women. So we have another layer that we have to take into consideration of the colonization of our bodies and the religious narrative that has been spun around us, which has to be undone and is being undone by people like yourself who, come as openly as Muslim women and give the opposite narrative. And obviously there are male scholars here and there that might tackle this, but we have to undo a lot of things that we have learned from even religious institutions and our families and cultures around us, as well as our inferiority complexes, which is there, that as brown women, our bodies are not as good. Our bodies are broken. Our bodies, we have to be like another type of person, another race, in order to be in good health. So with that layer on top of it, poking and prodding in that area actually can often cause that area to contract even more. So what I do is I go in to other parts of the body first, and then we come into the pelvis when that person is ready. And that first place is always the breath. So we work on the ribs, the rib mobility, and the diaphragm, and strengthen it, mobilize the area, because we are stuck there. You know, we're not dancing enough. We've forgotten how to dance, right? We're just sitting rigid. And if we are moving, we're going to the gym. So, you know, that's the same rigidity.
Yeah.
So we've forgotten our indigenous moves. We've forgotten laughter. We've forgotten, you know, enjoyment, enjoying life. And these are all colonial, like, little hang-ups, which we also impose on ourselves as, you know, the colonized becomes the colonizer. So it's not, I'm not blaming any, you know, particular thing other than this is the system we're in. So we move the ribs, we work on the breath. Now, by that time, the person is beginning to connect with the body. And I used to use the word, I help women reconnect with the body, but since working with women, some women, in fact, most women have never connected with their body. So there's no reconnection. They're connecting for the first time, feeling their pubic bone, feeling their sacrum, listening to what nervousness feels like, allowing it to complete, listening to what fear feels like, allowing it to complete. They've never done this before. They've never really, you know, this bracing is so much that their body has got areas that are fully stagnated. And we call that sensory motor amnesia, where the muscle literally is dead. So we have to reawaken these places. We do that through breath. We do that through movement. So I will, you know, we will move in different ways. We will start to get comfortable in just engaging with the body, feeling the body, slowing things down. And then I have this method, the Bloom method. It's 5 pillars. So we do pressure management, which is all about breath. We do pleasure, which I know you teach as well. It's so important. And we talk about, you know, even sexual pleasure and how important that is, because the pelvic floors are involved in, that's one of their functions. And trying to get rid of the taboo of that, especially as Islam is very sex positive. And so just allowing the women to express that and understand that there's medicine in it. Then we the third pillar, power, which is the strength of the hips, the muscles around it, because the pelvic floors are connected to many muscles. And so working on those muscles helps to take the strain off the pelvic floor. So we work to strengthen the back, the hips, the legs. Also pulse, fourth pillar, which is all about flow. And so when we feel a pulse in the body, we're flowing.
Yeah.
And so that's all about the fascia, releasing the fascia, getting rid of stagnation and knots so that blood can flow to the pelvis and waste can flow out. And that heals a lot of problems. Because pelvic congestion is a really big issue, because we sit a lot more than we used to or are designed to. Yeah, so how many did it? Pulse,
Pressure,
pulse,
pleasure,
pleasure, power, and posture. So how you align, how you dynamically stack up as you're moving, as you're sitting, just becoming aware of that. Becoming aware of how you're clenching in your, say, your belly or your bottom, even just standing there. So just becoming aware of that and releasing that tension. Because what you do on a daily basis is much more effective than, you know, that 15 minutes of exercise, you know, once a week. You know, the way you breathe is going to affect your pelvic floor much more. So coming in at that angle. And while doing this, when there is capacity, while we do that work, we start to really bring ourselves down and feel the pelvic floor and allow it to open and relax. And that is the major, major work, not the contraction. The contraction is, you know, people are already overly contracted. So learning to relax and release.
Mm.
And when a person feels safe enough to do that, we come to that part and we do that there.
Amazing.
Anytime. Yeah.
Amazing. And this is usually something you do one-to-one or in a group setting, virtual, in person. How do you offer this
Yeah.
support?
All of those things.
All of the above.
Yeah. One-to-one, in person and online. And then in group sessions, I would say in group sessions, it's more educative
Okay.
because I feel still in a group session, okay, so I've been in group sessions with non-Asians, non-Muslims in this arena, and the conversations are mind-blowing. And the group sessions with South Asians, Muslims, you know, the Muslim arena is still very, very tentative, very tentative. So the group sessions are mainly educative. There's very little real opening, because when you release your pelvic floor, you're very vulnerable, you're open, and it makes you feel open and accepted and honest.
Mm.
And I think that we still have a lot of work to do to get to that. And education at the moment is very important.
Okay.
And building spaces where people feel really comfortable to just acknowledge that they have a pelvic floor and it needs to relax.
Mm.
So the group sessions are more education, but we do some of the work
Movement.
in that as well. Yeah.
Amazing. Oh. And on my side, I mean, particularly around female bodies and periods and just pelvic, like everything that those early imprints in the pelvic bowl, that's where I'm really passionate about having these conversations, starting early, before periods, talking about our anatomy, before we start talking about fiqh and menstruation and tahara and all of these topics. Let's just start building body literacy, really understanding your anatomy, how it functions, and naming your parts and knowing what your body, how it's designed, and what it is here to do, and
Absolutely.
how your body is with you. I do feel like sometimes in these or religious communities, the body is kind of seen as a liability, right? Like,
Yes.
I'm just so spiritual, and if it weren't for this body that just was tethering me to the ground, tethering me to bodily functions, periods, marriage, relations, birth, babies, etc. Like, I would just be, I think especially for women, I was listening to someone recently sharing that, masculine spirituality is often about ascending the body's experiences, right? And suppressing your anger and rage and your desire. But for women, the tendency is the opposite, not being able to inhabit the body and not being able to worship through the body's functions and through those emotions and through those desires, and really understanding them. And I thought that was a really interesting juxtaposition. And so, I'm really excited for more conversations to be happening earlier, right? Where we're talking
Yes.
about these topics much earlier. And so Peaceful Period Facilitator training is starting June 7th, which I'm really excited about. we already have 18 women who are signed up for the training, and just
Amazing.
the thought of so many women around the world, some even in different languages, we're going to figure out how we're all going
That's
to get through
amazing. Oh,
together.
wow.
But just so exciting to know that they'll be able to translate this content into their context, to their culture, into their languages, and start having these conversations with teens and tweens, preteens, so much earlier, so their period isn't a source of shame. They are opening into their bodies and not tensing, bracing, expecting pain and not knowing what to do with period pain, but really having tools to have peaceful periods every month. So
Yeah,
that's
that's
what's happening.
such an amazing offering and so needed in our communities. It's absolutely beautiful. And I really, you're one of the people that inspired me when I came into this work of the womb. You were one of the first people that I followed, and really drew a lot of inspiration from you. And I have recently qualified as a womb steaming practitioner, so I'm like on that path as well,
Amazing.
alhamdulillah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's absolutely brilliant news. And I also am doing a workshop. I do these 1 or 2 a year called Love Your Cycle. And it's basically a very crafty, relaxed introduction to the seasons of the womb. And it's a very somatic approach. So we don't talk really about hormones and, all the nasty stuff or the biological stuff. We actually embody each season. And then we also make a cycle tracker. So it's in
Amazing.
person, it's in Birmingham. So if anybody is
Oh,
listening from, then please do join us. And again, that's like a step that I'm taking in my community to speak to multi-generational groups as well.
amazing. Amazing. Do you have any dates yet for your next?
That's on the 20th of June. Yeah.
Oh, amazing. Okay,
Yeah,
awesome.
soon.
So coming up soon. So June
Yeah.
20th in Birmingham. Awesome.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, thank you for spending
Thank you.
time with me. Always a pleasure. We'll be
Absolutely.
in touch again soon. Before we know it, the fall, we're just in summer, but the fall is coming, which is perimenopause season. So people will see more of us
Absolutely.
very soon. Before you
Absolutely.
know it, the summer will be over and it'll
I
be autumn
know.
all over again.
I know.
Well,
Well,
and
I hope the training goes beautifully, and
thank
I've
you.
shared it amongst everyone as well. So, inshallah, I hope you get your full cohort, and
Yeah.
yeah, it goes really well.
Thank you. And make sure you let me know whenever you start to publicize the next Love Your Cycle session.
I will.
Happy to share that with the community as well. So
Thank
enjoy
you.
your day. Have a blessed
Thank you.
Juma.
You too.
All
You
right, take
too.
care. Assalamu
Take care.
alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.